two front-facing cameras and a pair of big front-facing stereo speakers. And the speakers are pretty good, but with a catch. So I've compared them to iPhone XS Max and the Razer phone, some of the loudest speakers in any phone, and these are every bit as loud, if not louder, and they sound fuller and they definitely have more bass, but it just distorts a little bit at the highest volume. And then they also vibrate the whole bottom of the phone at loud volumes. It's not a problem at all, I just noticed like I would feel it more than normal if I had loud music going in my hand. So then the notch at the top, it's just, you can't not talk about this screen without talking about the notch. It's like a metaphor for the whole phone. You can't talk about this phone without talking about that notch. So the fact is, it doesn't really look like any other notch on any other phone. It has this face, it's really tall, but the weird thing is it's not actually really that much bigger than a lot of other notches. Here's what I mean. This is the iPhone XS, and the notch is just about the same volume as other notches, but it's narrower and taller instead of slimmer and wider. But this choice, assuming it was a choice, shifts the whole UI more down into the screen and you lose more of the top ears, as they call it. That's just losing screen real estate. This, my friends, is what we call in the business a poor use of space. Do they absolutely have to go with this tall of a notch? I don't know. Google didn't really tell us. They didn't really emphasize anything about it in the keynote, obviously. Like, were they so set on having two front-facing cameras and a big speaker that they had to go with this tall notch? Or were they so set on this tall notch that they figured they might as well throw in two cameras and a front-facing speaker? I don't know, but it is what it is. The truth is, a week into using this phone, I don't pay attention to the notch anymore, like every other phone I've used with a notch, but I still want it to go away. I still want it to be smaller. I'm basically hoping notches in smartphones are a temporary hurdle and we're kind of over it by 2020 or 2022. Maybe that's just me being optimistic. But until then, if you absolutely cannot deal with a notch, you can either get the smaller Pixel 3 and deal with a smaller phone with a smaller battery, or you can hide the notch by ticking the developer setting that permanently blocks out the top notch section. Your call. So I could talk for a while about performance and smoothness of Android on this phone, but the bottom line is, it's good. That's the short of it. Google knows how to tune their own Android phone. It's well optimized, and this is gonna be one of the only phones with Android P for a while. Now on the 4 gigs of RAM, I'll get to that in a second, but just the overall smoothness and performance of Pixel 3 has been great. I'd say my biggest complaint with the software is probably just the gestures, honestly. I've done an entire separate video on all the new stuff with Android P, including these gestures, which were optional at the time, but now this is the only navigation option and you're forced to get used to it, which I am, but I still don't prefer it, so that's just me. But then past that, Pixel has all kinds of little software tricks and smart features, possibly making this the smartest smartphone I've ever used. Google Lens, identifying things in front of the camera all the time. That's smart. The Now Playing feature, I love this. It'll tell you what song is playing in the background of whatever room or car you're in without you having to ask, and it keeps a rolling history of it. That's smart. And of course, just Google Assistant in general, absolutely useful. And call screen. Call screen is super good. I think we've all noticed at some point there seems to be more spam calls happening, at least to me, I've noticed it. So when you're receiving an incoming call on Pixel 3 with call screen, you can either accept, reject, or screen the call with Google Assistant. And when you do, Google Assistant picks up the phone call.
Hi, the person you're calling is using a screening service from Google and will get a copy of this conversation. Go ahead and say why you're calling.
Yeah, I'm the UPS guy and I'm downstairs.
Do you need to get a hold of them urgently?
Yes, if you don't answer, then I have to bring this 2020 Mac Pro back to the factory.
Thanks. Connecting you now.
So basically, the live transcription, if it's a real person, but I actually found most real people, when they hear that Google Assistant voice, they either immediately hang up or they think it's a voicemail. They leave a voicemail and then they hang up. So if I didn't catch what they said as they were saying it, then when they hang up, the live transcription disappears. So my one suggestion for Google would be to let me have a saved copy of that live transcription in case they just hang up. The battery life on the Pixel 3 Pretty unremarkable, very average actually. I'm averaging maybe 4 to 4.5 hours of screen on time for my high brightness use for those counting, but your mileage may vary. But basically don't expect this to go like all day and then some. It's definitely a one-day phone. But again, wireless charging is welcome. I'm doing it a lot more now with my primary device now that it supports it. I've also had some conversations with Google about things that I was complaining about before, like things that weren't optimized yet, bugs. They've already promised that they're going to fix my complaint in the last video, which was the fact that full screen videos weren't centered on Pixel 3 XL. They're gonna change that, so that's awesome. Shows they're listening. So, while we're at it, here's a couple other things that aren't quite right. So Instagram still needs to update their stories.
Fate of Oros. Inventory is full. Our cause is just. Our purpose noble. Dionys Akar. Krona kai Kristor. Have faith in the light.